Great. Well, thank you very much, Tim. I have to tell you now that this is, as you've probably guessed already, a double act. And that I'm going to start, and then Sonia's going to do a bit in the middle, and then I'm going to carry on at the end, and then we're going to do Q&A at the end. Normally, so this presentation, which I have to say is like a really exciting topic to be talking about right now, and we're kind of just on the cusp of being able to go back to ringing. This presentation is kind of like a whistle-stop tour of a full-day workshop that VNL, the recruitment and retention team, developed with ART, the Association of Ringing Teachers, which we're going to refer to throughout as ART, so don't get confused in case you're not familiar, but I think probably everybody is. So thank you very much, Tim, for the lovely introduction. And thank you very much to the organisers for inviting us both to talk about this, which is a topic we're both, as you've probably guessed, very keen on. I should say that I almost gave up learning to ring because it took me so long to handle a bell. And so I feel the pain of those learners, and I kind of understand when you're on that knife edge and you're trying to decide, do I carry on with this or do I just give up? You know, and we don't want people to give up. We want them to carry on. And really the thing that kept me carrying on was the social aspect, particularly because at the time I was an undergraduate, I was doing a very stressful course at university, and ringing, the evening I went ringing and then went to the pub afterwards, it was when I switched off and I forgot all about that and I just concentrated on something else and had those social interactions. And that's what kept me going. And that's something that we're going to it really comes out through this talk and through Sonia's case studies that she's going to be talking about. That, you know, it's not just the ringing that keeps people, there's all the other aspects to the whole exercise that keeps people going and retains your recruits, and you need to focus on those as much as the ringing itself. Sonia, I think Tim kind of did the intro for us, so I'm just going to move on, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Brilliant. Okay, before I move, can everybody see the slide, the title slide? Give me a nod. Brilliant, lovely, thank you. To check that I can do it. So positive thoughts. We can do this, right? And something that Sonia's picked up through her case studies is that basically everyone has what it takes to attract and retain ringers, people to your band. So it's not like there's like some very difficult skill or something. Some skills, you know, people have more naturally than others, but we can all do this. So embrace this opportunity that we have to just take stock, reflect on what we've been doing before, and think about how we can come back better and do things differently, and hopefully be even stronger for it. So before we go on, I'm just going to mention the elephant in the room, which is that, of course, we don't really know when exactly we're going to be able to get back to face-to-face teaching. We don't know how, you know, when it's going to be when we can be close enough to teach kind of the initial stages of bell handling and being there to keep your hand on the rope, etc. However, two things, that doesn't mean that we can just sit on our hands for the next couple of months and not do anything. There's plenty of opportunity to do things in the meantime. And the other thing is that the presentation last night by Claire McArdle and Martin Reeves, if I remember that correctly, they did mention some things that you could potentially teach in the tower that wouldn't involve being standing right next to your learner. So if you're interested in that, I do recommend having a look at the recording of yesterday's presentation. So moving on, as I mentioned, this talk focuses on some Association of Ringing Teachers resources, the recruitment toolbox, which we tend to refer to as the 10-point plan because it has 10 points and it's a planning document. And that this presentation is based, it's like a whistle-stop tour of a workshop that we've developed that takes basically all day. So normally we'd have lots of discussion and sharing of experiences, and hopefully we can do a little bit of that in the Q&A at the end, but it is very much a whistle-stop tour, and we'll just pick out the highlights. And we've got a whole load of resources, links to resources that we'll share with you at the end, and I have them in a document that hopefully can be sent out or put on a website so that everyone has access to it. And I should mention that this workshop, although it was originally planned as an in-person event, I believe that ART are looking at making it an online workshop, so do keep your eye out for that. Okay, so this is something we're going to come back to. As I mentioned, everyone can do these things. So we'll be giving some examples of what you can do for these very, very important 10 take-home points throughout this talk. So first of all, before we start planning, let's just sort of recap what actually gets people into the tower. And this is research that I think has been around for a few years now. Hopefully you've probably seen a version of this at some point before, whether it's in the ringing world or another presentation somewhere. But basically, existing ringers who've been ringing for years, decades maybe, probably there's a reasonable chance they were a member of the church. For brand new ringers, it's much less likely that they were a member of church. So basically, kind of talking to your church community and expecting to be able to recruit all your new ringers out directly from the church community is not going to work anymore. We need to be looking at new opportunities and new audiences to recruit from. And actually, that's something that Ringing Remembers, that Vicky was obviously absolutely instrumental in, has shown can work really, really well. We don't just have to talk to the church, we can talk to loads and loads of different members of the wider community and recruit from there. So we really encourage you to open your eyes and think about new audiences who you could talk to and try and encourage to at least give it a go. So recruitment and retention, or retention and recruitment. So at the moment you might just be thinking, you know what, I just need to get my band back and ringing, then I'll deal with new recruits. We just need to get back in the tower, see how many people we've got, and then we'll work it out. Well, actually the things that we're going to cover now today in this quick talk are really also very, very, very relevant for encouraging your existing members who maybe are a little bit cautious about coming back, or maybe they've not been ringing for a while and they don't really miss it that much. You know, encouraging them back and to stick at it is just as relevant. It's just as relevant as that for encouraging new recruits to come and give it a go and then stay at it as well. So although it might seem like a chicken and egg, actually all these things are really, really valuable for both situations. Okay, so the very first thing you need to do, and it's kind of easy to forget because of course we're so involved with it all that we forget what it's like, is to raise awareness. So I actually grew up in Scotland and I started learning to ring in Scotland, and those of you may know there's, I think at the moment, something like 22 towers in Scotland, which may or may not include mini rings, and when I was learning I think it was 17. So they are few and far between, and you're not really aware of it. Though you might think that's not very relevant to, say, certain places in England where there are, you know, as many towers within a 10-mile radius as there are in the whole of Scotland. But actually, if you think about it, in a town, can you hear the church bells? If you're in a town or a city, there's the traffic noise, there's the general noise of the city all round about, and it's quite likely that inside the louvers has been bricked up, possibly all the way. And so we're so used to being in the ringing room and hearing the bells, or in the church and hearing the bells, that you forget that actually outside the church they might not be audible. So just because you know the bells are there and the church is there does not mean that everyone else who walks past the church or lives next door to the church is aware the bells are there. So that's one thing to bear in mind. The other thing to bear in mind is how many people have heard the phrase, oh, but I thought a machine did that. Right? A lot of people think that ringing is, or they don't get the difference between clock chimes and ringing, and they assume that a machine does it. So there are bells and we need people to ring them. That's kind of the key message. And on top of that, it's fun is really, you know, the strongest message you can give. It's fun, it's a great thing to do. So there are lots of different ways you can raise awareness, and I'll share some resources. Obviously, there's some suggestions on the screen here, you know, leaflets, maybe to new housing estates or the houses that are around the church, local paper or magazine articles. Make sure that you have a web page, either on the church website or your local association or guild website, or a standalone website, whatever, a web page with the key details like contact details, the most important thing, and that goes for leaflets, magazine articles. If you get a slot on the local radio station, you know, always signpost someone you're interested, where to go next for more information. Social media, really, really important. Facebook is an amazing recruiting tool. You know, I know someone in a village where we had no local ringers whatsoever, and she's managed to get, you know, a very viable band going more or less via Facebook. If you're not comfortable with social media, find someone who is. There are lots and lots of people who can help. I mean, I think something we've learned through the whole pandemic and lockdown situation is the extended bell ringing community. Doesn't matter if we don't live 2 miles down the road from each other anymore. You could be in different time zones. We can still help each other out. And the most important thing is to be enthusiastic and welcoming, because that's what people remember. They're not going to remember all the details of like how a bell is rung, or you know, if you talk to them about that. But if you are enthusiastic and keen and welcoming and friendly, that's what they'll remember, and that's really important. Okay, and yeah, just talking to people, really, really important. Bring it up in everyday conversation. You know, then you might have a whole load of friends who don't actually know that you ring bells. So you never know. If you talk to them a bit more about it, they might be encouraged to come and give it a go. The next thing to have a think about before you plan anything at all is, what do you actually want to achieve? How many new recruits do you want? Do you want to just encourage back your existing ringers? Is that enough, at least to start with? Do you have no band at all? Have the bells fallen silent, and you need to recruit a whole new band? Do you want a steady influx of new recruits, which is much more manageable than a whole band from scratch? And what are the aspirations and values of the band? What do they want? Do they just want to be able to ring the bells for Sunday service, rounds, call changes? Do they maybe realize that if they just had a couple more ringers, they could achieve so much more in terms of method ringing? And the other thing to bear in mind is, if you get these new recruits, do you actually have the skills and people in your own tower to be able to train them up and transform them into fully developed ringers? Or are you going to need help? Are you going to need to approach people from other towers, maybe from your guild, maybe friends from across the border into the next guild or association, shock horror, to come and give you a hand? And as I mentioned, a steady trickle is more manageable than a sudden influx. It's important to involve your band. We're going to come back to this a bit later. Involve your band in these discussions and planning, rather than just working it all out by yourself. Because one of the things that makes retention really happen is that you have incorporated those new recruits into the band, and the band is happy to have them. So if you've involved your band members in the discussions, and it's the whole band making decisions about things together, then that's much more likely to happen. Something that I'm sure whoever gave the talk on interactions with your church and growing the relationship with your church, get your vicar on side, because you really need them on side. And are you going to need to think about working together with other towers, maybe forming some kind of cluster, or I mean, maybe a ringing school is too strong a term, but are you going to need some support? Could you perhaps share some new recruits? Do you already share a band, perhaps? Okay, so the next thing we want to consider is, who are you going to aim at recruiting? And we've already mentioned that probably church groups and the church congregation. Yes, of course, ask them, but don't expect to get all your new recruits directly from the church. That's going to be pretty unlikely nowadays. So there's a massive list of different options here. And obviously university students might not be an option if you live in a little village miles and miles away from the nearest university. So have a look at these suggestions, try and think of other ones. Which aspects of the community, the wider community, have you not thought of engaging with? And something that I want to emphasize, that I work in higher education, and this is a very important issue at the moment, and probably will be for some time to come, is diversity. And okay, I didn't see everybody on the screen before I started this talk, but let's just say that everybody I saw was white. Okay, we have a big diversity issue in ringing, and if we don't have a diverse group of ringers, that means that we're missing out on a massive section of the community, like a huge amount of talent that's out there. Think of all those potential ringers out there that we're not engaging with, and we're not managing to even talk to about ringing, never mind get through the door to give it a go. So I would really, really encourage you to try and think outside the box. Think of audiences that you haven't previously engaged with and how you might engage with them. Yeah, but I mean, really, to be honest, the main message from this slide is just anyone, really anyone, random people off the street. Lapsed ringers is underlined because, yeah, if you know of anyone who used to ring, and to be honest, if you start talking to people and you mention you're a bell ringer, the number of people that say, oh, I used to do that when I was a teenager, or, oh, I gave that a go, you know, and then I stopped because I had a family or moved away. Try and encourage them back. It's worth it. So number 4, what are you going to do? Like, what's your plan for actually recruiting people? And you might think that there isn't really anything you can do while we're still a bit restricted and there's a limited number of people you can have indoors, particularly in ringing rooms where it's small and there's not much ventilation. This isn't true. There's loads of stuff you can do before we can actually get back in the ringing room. And there's too much to go into in this short talk, but we do actually have a Ringing World article on it, and there's also various resources online that you can make use of, and I'll signpost to these all at the end of the talk. I'll put it on the chat, and we've got this document we can share as well. But one of the things that you could think about doing is doing some kind of online talk about sort of ringing in general, maybe your church or your tower or your bells in particular, and then a have a go session in, for example, ringing room. And you can start small. You don't have to do this big. You could just do it with a small group of friends, or maybe some people from the church. And once you've got your confidence up, maybe think about trying it again or with a bigger audience, whatever. And we do have some online guidance and a slide pack that you can download and use to help you with that. Okay, so if you've got an idea about what you want to do, of course, the next thing you want to do is publicize it so that people know it's going to happen. Now, I do speak from experience here. I was once involved in a Tower Open Day, which it turned out hadn't been publicized at all, and literally nobody turned up. The only people who were there were the flower arrangers in the church, and they were just annoyed because we were in their way. So it's really, really important to publicize whatever it is that you're doing as much as you possibly can and through as many different channels as you can, because if people don't know it's going to happen, they're not going to turn up. And even as we were discussing before this talk formally started, even if you have people signed up, it's quite often a 50% success rate with, you know, who actually turns up at the on the day versus who signed up in advance. So something to bear in mind is that different media work better for different kinds of audiences. So young kids aren't going to pay attention to Facebook, for example. But other kind of audiences might be better reached through, for example, the local paper or the local radio or Facebook, or maybe posters or leaflets through doors, whatever. Try and be specific in your message. Try and use the right kind of medium or media to reach your target audience. Have a clear call to action so people know how to sign up or when to turn up. And try and use as many different communication channels as you can, because then you'll reach a wider range of people. Okay, so let's say you've decided you want to do a successful virtual event. You've publicized it all, or you've worked out how you're going to publicize it. How are you actually going to do it? Well, there's already some great examples out there. Sonia has done this before. So Sonia is a great person to talk to about doing this. And there's also, you've probably seen in the Facebook group, the Wensleydale Ringers have been doing this, and it seems to have been very successful with it. So don't be afraid to reach out to other people to say, hey, I've seen that you did this before. Can you give me some tips? Can you tell me what you did? Is there any lessons learned? Would you do things differently next time? And as I mentioned, we have some resources online to help you with this. So, you know, you don't need to work it all out from scratch. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. You can learn from what other people have done already. And that's not just true for this, that's true for everything. No need to reinvent the wheel. Loads of resources out there already. So this is a virtual event. Of course, normally we do like a Tower Open Day or something, and maybe in future you can plan to do that kind of thing as well. But I think virtual is probably here to stay, and it will be mixtures of things going forwards. Okay, so let's say you've had a successful virtual event. People were interested. Some people expressed interest in coming back and learning to ring. It's really, really important to follow up with those people as quickly as possible. You don't want them to lose interest, and you don't want them to think that you've lost interest in them. So follow up as soon as you can. Be as personal as you can. Phone them up, or a personalized email. Don't send an email that looks like you sent exactly the same email to 20 different people. Try and engage them as soon as you can, and get them signed up for something else, even if it's not ringing per se, even if it's some kind of social event with your band or something like that. So let's say all this has worked. You've got some new recruits. They want to learn to ring. Okay, so I'm imagining quite a lot of people on the call possibly learnt to ring along the lines of, oh, we have a tower practice at 7:30 on Wednesday evening, so you can come along. 5 minutes on the end of the rope, half an hour later, have another 5 minutes on the end of the rope, half an hour later, have another 5 minutes on the end of the rope. Oh, that's you got. See you next week. You make very, very slow progress like that, and it's quite likely that your new recruit is not going to progress, and they're going to lose interest, and they're not going to come back. So how could we do things differently? How can we keep them engaged? Interesting fact from last night's talk, I think it was 20% of learning is lost in 20 minutes. So if you learn something new, 20 minutes later, you're not going to be able to remember 20%, so a fifth of that. So if you're only giving someone 5 minutes on the end of the rope every half an hour, they're not really going to remember from one session to the next anything at all. So keeping the new recruits is often more of a challenge than actually recruiting them in the first place. And I'm sure we can all think of towers where they seem to get a lot of new recruits. They never really seem to stick around for very long, or at least not long enough to really become kind of integrated, useful members of the band. Why is this? Well, Sonia's case study, which we'll get onto in just a few minutes, does have some really good pointers about this. But we would really just encourage you to think about it from the learner's point of view, right? Try and put yourself in their shoes. And if you can't really remember what that was like, find someone who is a newer learner and ask them. And I'm sure one of the things they would say that they found challenging was feeling like you're making very slow progress and that you're never going to manage to ring in rounds or join the rest of the band. And so really, it's really, really important to have high quality, intensive training to get your learner as integrated into the band and able to achieve something as quickly as possible. There are some suggestions from yesterday's talk, if you watch it, about some teaching activities that you could actually start even while there's social distancing still in place. So you might want to have a look at that. And also some intensive training things. Claire discussed quite a few intensive training options. Of course, there's the ART modules. And the other thing to bear in mind is that now we have this wealth of online training resource that we didn't have before. We have Ringing Room, we have Handbell Stadium, we have Zoom. I think people tended not to discuss theory in the tower because it was felt very much like you're in the tower, you have to use that time for actually ringing bells. Whereas now we can also help the learners achieve more and start developing other aspects of their skills and their theory understanding outside the tower using, for example, Ringing Room. And that will help them feel like they're making progress while they're still learning to handle a bell. And something else that we briefly touched on is that it's really, really important to assimilate your new ringers into the band as quickly as you can so that they actually feel part of something. And that's something that Sonia's research has shown, is that people who feel included and welcomed and that they're part of a team, they're the people who want to come back ringing. They want to go to the next practice because they feel like they belong there. And so that could be making use of things like 50 ringing things or 50 virtual ringing things, but also, including your new recruits in your social events, maybe even before you're back in the tower, your weekly Zoom call with your tower friends, your online quizzes, if you're meeting in the park for a picnic or you're going for a walk, any of those things. Just because they can't ring yet doesn't mean that they, you can't invite them. You can include them, make them feel part of the band before they've even got as far as touching a Sally. Okay, and then something I mentioned before is that it's really important that recruitment works for everybody in the band. It's no good recruiting a whole load of new ringers if your established ringers get really fed up and leave. And either go and ring with someone else because they don't want to be ringing with all your new learners who can't even ring in rounds, or they just stop ringing because they don't find it interesting anymore, or they don't find it challenging or fulfilling anymore. So as we already mentioned, if you involve your existing ringers, whether they're like top-notch splice surprise people or they can just about ring rounds and call changes, involve your existing ringers in the planning and the recruiting and the events and the welcoming and all that kind of thing, then they feel like they're invested in it as well. And try and plan for making sure that everybody in your band, not just the new recruits, gets something out of every practice or every interaction that you have. So it might even be a case of going around your existing band members, perhaps before you get back in the tower, and saying, okay, we've had a bit of a break. What do you want to concentrate on? You know, if in an ideal world, what would you like to concentrate on when we get back in the tower? And planning your practices and trying to make sure there's something fulfilling for everybody. And some of your existing experienced ringers might feel fulfilled enough just by contributing to supporting and helping the learners. That might be enough for them, but some of them it won't be. Some of them, they need to be developing their own skills and learning new methods or whatever as well. So it's really important to make sure that everybody feels that they're contributing and that they're fulfilled and it is worth their time being there. And we're all really, really busy people. And when we come out of lockdown properly and all the restrictions are lifted, we're going to be even more busy. And people have to feel like it's worth their time being somewhere. Otherwise, they're just going to vote with their feet and leave. If you are looking for some pointers on running a successful practice, I do believe there is a talk on that very theme tomorrow evening. So if you haven't signed up, sign up already. And now we're going to move over to Sonia, who is going to talk about her case study for her online virtual ringing band that has been running for just over a year and is extremely successful. So I'll stop sharing so that Sonia can share her slides.
Thanks, Steph. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sonia Field, and I'm going to be taking you through some research findings, hot off the press, to do with triggers for successful attraction and retention. And as I do that tonight, you will notice that many of the things that I'm going to say actually illustrate the points that Steph has just made really well, and indeed vice versa. So I'm just going to get my screen up. Oh. First difficulty. It doesn't want me to go on to slideshow. We had this problem yesterday. I've got all the icons at the top that are over the bit that says slideshow, so I can't go on to slideshow and new slide.
Can you drag them out of the way, Sonia?
Aha, yes, thank you very much. Hopefully. From the beginning, there we go. Okay, that's better. We thought we'd overcome it yesterday. Okay, so you'll see the eKenton logo on this first slide. I live in Kenton, which is near Harrow in the northwest of Greater London. And eKenton was established as a virtual training band during the first lockdown to provide ongoing tower bell training using Ringing Room and Zoom. Membership is predominantly, but not exclusively, made up of ringers from the Middlesex Association. Our first practice was held on the 19th of April last year with 6 ringers, and now we have well over 20 ringers who attend regularly. And I've called the presentation Destination Unknown. Well, why have I done that? Well, the key is actually the question mark. Because when a potential recruit walks through the door, what we want is to be sure that their destination is not unknown, and that all the time and energy that we know we channel into new recruits actually results in an addition to our band. So we want their destination to be known. So I have a few real life scenarios taken from experiences from the eKenton band. Oh. There we go. And some of these may be familiar to some of you out there. So I've got a little synopsis of situations that people have told me about, and I have actually color-coded using 3 colors some particular points. So the green are potential hooks, positive things that we can work on to promote enthusiasm and engagement amongst our members. The amber, however, are possible causes for concern, things that we would look at and think, oh, that's not so good. Somebody's dropped out. Why did a band need to reform? Of course, there might be plenty of very good reasons. What was it that was difficult? What is difficult for a ringer? Is there something we can do to overcome that? And in blue, I've noted some positive things that could potentially be done to overcome amber problems. So, for example, laying on more practice might actually persuade somebody not to drop out who otherwise would. So again, some of these situations might be familiar to you. The amber warning signs, such as limited progress being made and lack of drive by others in the band, have in this situation been outweighed by feelings of loyalty and attachment to the church. Those are very positive things. But the question is that actually enough to maintain long-term retention? And I would suggest that it's probably unlikely to promote attraction in the first place to new potential ringers. So the last scenario that I'm going to give you, the blue points here, very praiseworthy. They're excellent, visiting other towers, going on outings, attending training sessions. But despite this, there are amber warning signs emerging. There's low confidence and frustration, and this could easily result in dropout. So what we're going to do now for a moment is we're going to consider a completely hypothetical situation. We're going to look at the flip side. And I'd like your fingers poised on the keyboard, please, because I'm going to ask you to put something in the chat, which Tim is going to field for me. Imagine that you're in a very happy band of ringers. You don't want any more ringers to join your band because you're very happy, you've got your friends, you know what you're doing, and anybody else coming in would quite frankly just upset the apple cart. So your top priority is to repel any interest from all newcomers. So fingers on the keyboard. You've got 30 seconds in the chat to tell me what strategies you would use to make sure that you absolutely definitely don't encourage any interest and any newcomers into your band. I would start off by saying, I'm going to lock the tower door. What would you do?
Well, I would discourage people.
Can you pop it in the chat? And Tim's going to pick out some of his favourites.
Oh,
Yeah.
you can do it then.
I can't see anything in the chat for some reason, so I'm relying on Tim here. Oh, I've managed to pick it
If
up.
you've got someone else, we could say, what, tell them we've got enough ringers already.
Tell them.
Tim, would you like to pick out a few of your favourites?
There's some, there's a lovely one there about ignoring people. So I think the winners are probably be generally secretive, don't talk to anybody. And if anybody does manage to get in, only give them a short time. Be discouraging, tell them how hard it is. Don't give people a go. Keep them there for ages and don't ask them to ring. There's another great one here, reading complicated methods all night. If they do come in, chatting, please. So, I mean, it's difficult to analyse quickly, Sonia, but I think the main thing there is that the winner is to be rude, patronising, ignorant, and very unwelcoming.
Right, well, I actually think we could probably stop there tonight then, because clearly you're all absolute experts at what not to do. So what Steph and I are going to say is, could you please flip that back and do the exact opposite? So whatever you put in the chat, don't do that, turn it round, flip it back, do the opposite. So let's move on to the real world. I decided, there we go. I decided to do a little research. And as all the members of my Kenton band have joined at least one new band in the last year, I asked them to let me know what attracts them personally to ring with a band and what personally keeps you ringing with that band. Now, I did stipulate that their views didn't need to be confined to pandemic ringing or to Kenton. And clearly those who've been ringing for longer than a year are likely to have wider experiences upon which to draw. I had 23 results, 23 responses of 26 requests. These ranged from a 19-year-old to over 70s. And because there's a possibility, hopefully moving forward, of a youth band of ringers nationally being set up, I've actually coded in this sort of slightly shimmery blue responses from under 25s. I just thought I'd highlight those and keep those separate. Now, at this point of the evening, I've actually got to issue a public health warning. Because the research that I carried out was qualitative, there's a huge number of words that have come back, and I have amalgamated and I have condensed radically. However, there still is a lot of words to read. So in the next few slides that I'm going to take you through, please don't feel compelled to read every single thing that I put up. This is being recorded. I have made the PowerPoint available, so anyone that wants it is welcome to have it. But there's just too much reading, so just don't worry too much. I am going to be picking out the main trends and summarise as I whiz through. And the other thing to note is that because I have condensed some of the information, we do lose the nuances of responses and the weight of similarities and also diversity. And I will try and just pick some of those themes out as I go through for you. I've collated the information according to the ART Learning the Rope levels, and I'll explain that as I go through. So the first group of ringers is Learning the Ropes 1, the ART Learning the Ropes 1. These are not solo handling. And I asked them what attracts you to a band. I had 3 female responses, including 1 under 25. Now, the first couple of points. This is not the time for IT to disappear on you, is it? Oh. No, there we go. The first couple of points refer to behaviours. Am I being welcomed, particularly as a learner? I'm sure we can all remember not just bell ringing, but walking into a group of what we consider to be established people, and we feel that we're completely out on a limb. We haven't got any experience of the things that they have got experiences of, and it is quite daunting. And are they friendly? Then we move on to quite an emphasis on learning. Have we got people to learn from? Is the situation non-critical? Is the band going to make time to work with me, not just give me 5 minutes 3 times during the evening? And then an acknowledgement of other reasons, such as feeling part of the team and the locality of practices. Now, the blue in this slide is not exclusive to under 25s. Just to point that out, but something that is relevant to under 25s and others, the locality of practices. So, for example, if the tower isn't accessible by public transport and somebody doesn't drive, how easy is it going to be for them to get to practices? Maybe somebody could actually think of offering them a lift, which would be really helpful. My next set of ringers are level 2, so these are solo handling but not yet plain hunting. And for those of you that are wondering why I've put it in green at the top, this is part of the blue zone. There's Simon Linford's blue, red and black zone. Were he to revise that, he may possibly put the lower end blue into the green, a new green band. And there were 2 female responses from that. Again, behaviours, personal invitation, a taster session and being welcomed, and also networking. Some emphasis on learning, but a much greater focus on wider issues, trying something new, something fun to talk about with friends, and curiosity. And that's something I'm going to come back to. Curiosity at this stage is a really good hook. And I think that it's probably because the strain of learning to ring is actually conquered at that point. We are solo handling, so we haven't got to put that brain strain into actually trying to work out how to physically handle a bell and get it to do what you want to do. So they can actually, new recruits can actually focus on wider issues. And this is the time to maybe engage them in the local history, to explain about the bells and the engravings on the bells, to talk about the mechanics, to get them into the team in the local quiz, whatever it is, take them on outings and really hook them into the wider aspects of bell ringing. Level 3 in learning the ropes is plain hunting and covering to methods. We're still in the blue zone. However, because of the blur at the moment between the virtual and actual ringing, some of the learners have actually progressed to working inside the methods. That's why I've got the plus in brackets there. And this is the biggest cohort, 6 females, 3 males, including 1 under 25. Because there are a lot of responses, I've got 3 slides. The first is to do with, I've labelled it as people, but as you'll see here, it's behaviours, the initial welcome and the first impression again, particularly with regard to new learners, the friendliness of the band, and being able to relate to others. The under 25 response wasn't exclusive to under 25s in this cohort, but it does raise the question of how effectively we do include youngsters in a band, particularly when there's maybe no other youngsters or perhaps just one or two. Obviously, if you've got a whole band of young people, it's a little easier. But if you've got a spread of ages, it is something worth considering. Networking and the benefits of and need for social inclusion. We're very social as people, that's just part of human nature, and being included socially is extremely important. And then something that sometimes when we're caught up with the whirlwind of life in general, we tend to forget, but kindness, which is extremely important. So the learning points that were mentioned by people in this cohort: inclusivity, Steph has already mentioned that, particularly regardless of my ability. Do we favour those when we're teaching in a practice who learn more quickly than others, and do we leave some on the sidelines? Are the practices frequent enough? And is there sufficient familiarity with the things that we're offering, the methods or whatever else it is that we're offering during the practices for us to peg successful learning on? A definite desire to learn, but also now, interestingly, we begin to see that not only do we want to learn from others, but we want to learn with others. And we would also like to share the knowledge that we have accrued with others. So we begin to see a shift from wanting to learn to wanting to share our abilities with other people. So then some other general points. Steph has already picked up on this. This was mentioned by an under 25, diversity. It does tend to be that when we walk into towers that they're largely white people, largely of a certain age. Obviously, if you've got a young ringers band, that's slightly different. But the lack of diversity is something that has been picked up. And also, again, under 25 response, no big age gap between me and the rest of the band. And this person cited that although it's not actually necessarily the case, it can feel very discouraging if there is a big gap, because they feel that they might not be taken seriously or given the same opportunities as others. Not necessarily the case, but that's how sometimes they feel. And these two comments were only mentioned by the under 25, nobody else. So other points, an interest outside the home. I love this one, making a nice sound which others would like to hear. Obviously, that's really what we're about, isn't it? Again, locality and timing of practice. So now moving beyond learning the ropes scheme into the red zone, which is surprise minor ringing and above. Again, we've got the welcome, we've got learning together, and then we've got aspects of learning, well-run practices, which I will come back to. Sorry, I've just gone one too far. It says all the band want to progress, not just some people in the band, but as a cohort, do they all want to progress in their learning, both as individuals and also as a band? And then we now begin to see a shift again towards actively wanting to help. So something to stretch the individual ringer, but also something that is worthwhile to help with. And then also giving back to the community. So giving back into the ringing situation, the ringing progress, and into the community itself. So now we move up into advanced ringers, the black zone, Bristol Max ringers and above. And again, because there's quite a few responses, I've popped it into 3 slides. So in this cohort, we've got 1 female and 4 males and 1 under 25. The under 25 comments are not exclusive to this slide. Again, the welcoming atmosphere has been picked out. Friendly people, ringing should be fun. Is there an immediate welcome? And inclusivity again, a culture where everyone feels welcome and encouraged. So they're mostly behaviours of individuals and the band. Now we move on to the learning that people have picked out. Does the ringing master think about others, not just themselves? Sometimes ringing masters perhaps may just do what they think they want to do, but are they actually sensitive to the needs and wants of other people? This is an interesting point, or at least I thought it was, learning something. This is somebody who can already ring complicated methods, but they're not necessarily worried about ringing something that is posh, if you like. They're actually simply wanting to learn, and that could be striking well at a lower end of the spectrum, the ringing spectrum, or it could be ringing Bristol Max or Orion Max or whatever well as well. But they're more worried about learning something, not what they're learning. So encouraging quality teaching and development of ringing. And again, we've got a shift here, a complete shift, ringing available at my level or the opportunity to assist a developing band. So these ringers do want to learn, but they're equally or sometimes even more satisfied by providing worthwhile assistance. And then some general other points that Steph has already mentioned: practice time, fitting in with other things, a clear desire from the band to want to improve, not just standing still. How many times have you been to a band where they're still practicing the same thing a year on and they don't seem to have improved? But particularly something that was picked out, a lot of responses saying they wanted to feel that they were making a difference. So summarising the themes in points that attract ringers, we have social behaviours, a personal invite, feeling welcome, social inclusion, friendship, increasing the social network. Then we've got learning, well-run practices, and as Steph said, Leslie Boyle is tomorrow holding a talk about holding a successful practice, and I can speak from personal experience here and say that she is well worth listening to. So I strongly suggest that you go, if you want to know what a well-run practice looks like, then listen to Leslie tomorrow. Okay. Good ringing is appropriate. Good ringing at appropriate level, effective tutors, inclusivity again, non-critical learning, and then a few other aspects in learning a new skill, convenient practice times and a local venue that suits, and opportunities to support others. So that's looking at what the triggers are for attraction. So let's just now move on to what the triggers are for retention. So once we've actually attracted someone to join the band, are they going to stay? How are we going to actually make sure that that happens? And this is what the responses have said. So some of the themes are very similar. So we've got people-related things. And then we've got a desire to learn effectively. Am I making progress? Is this actually going to help me? In this case, obviously, this is a lockdown learner and wants to feel that what we're doing will actually help when we get back onto real ringing, or when this person gets into real ringing. But that's actually a general statement. If I go to a practice, is what I have done during that practice actually going to help me? Or was it just a waste of time? And then the opportunity to actually apply what we've been doing. So the next cohort, the solo handlers but not yet plain hunting. Again, some social aspects, sharing the same interests, belonging to a group that they like, and a greater understanding of the requirements that are needed in order for them to be able to achieve. But a greater emphasis on wider criteria. So something that will improve my ability to concentrate, a feeling of being wanted and needed. This came out really strongly. In order for us to ring as a band, we need somebody on each of the ropes that we want rung. And therefore, each team member is valued highly. And that feeling of being part of the team came out really strongly in this cohort. And then other things, the challenges of bell ringing. Challenges of ringing different bells and ringing those bells well. So the plain hunting towards method ringing cohort here. Going to the after ringing pub and coffee shop. Friendship, good pubs. Fun socialising, familiar faces, practising together, and generally just having fun. And then the learning aspects. Again, some similar themes, well-run practices and quality teaching, and they're very much to the fore across the groups. opportunities to progress and being challenged, tutors who've got the time and patience to help. And these next two, having questions answered and supported theoretical learning, I think may have come out from lockdown teaching, but I think that's with us to stay. As Steph has mentioned, we've got this platform now where we can actually support ringers and teach on an ongoing basis. We can do the theory, and that's something that has definitely come through the research that I've done. A good teaching plan using incremental steps and continued investment in my improvement by others. People are keen to have the help. And then other categories, development opportunities for everybody. Having somebody else available to ask for help, not just the teacher. Sometimes it can be really daunting having to go to the teacher and say, oh, I didn't really understand this, or could you go through this again? I'm really sorry. And if you can actually go and ask somebody else, not only is that really helpful because that somebody else then has to focus their learning in order to explain it to you, but it doesn't feel as scary or as threatening. Equality, living in a similar area, it promotes group cohesion. You can go out together as well more easily. Visiting other towers as a band, this ticks a huge number of boxes. Team building, friendship, widening experiences. Adaptability of leaders to new circumstances. I think during lockdown, trying to get to grips with IT definitely ticks that box. And then supporting other ringers, again, we're seeing a definite shift from learning to also wanting to help. So now the red zone ringers, the surprise minor. Again, we've got social networking. And interestingly, I think here, it's really embedding. They want this sort of extended family that we have as bell ringers. We are so privileged, and that is something that comes out very much in the responses that have come back. And then wanting to develop my own skills, leadership opportunities during practices, and having our skills used well to support others, not just, oh, well, you can go and, I don't know what, tidy the first aid box or something, but if their skills are really good at standing behind and helping learners, then use them to do that. Don't not use the skills that people can offer. And there's a definite keenness that skills are used. And also having a role to play in the church community and feeling a part of that community, whether or not we are a regular attendee at services ourselves. So we want to ring for services, we don't have to attend the church service. So then the Bristol Max, the black zone ringers. Again, 3 slides. This is people stuff, meeting friendly people, social stuff, making good friends. And I'm wondering whether perhaps at this level, ringing is about meeting the social needs of the individuals rather more than developing their own skills further. There's a kind of relaxed atmosphere in some of these top-end ringers. Some of them are really, really focused, and so they should be. But when they're actually looking at joining a band and ringing with a band, there's more weight on the social side than perhaps developing their own ringing. Fun comes out time and time again. So the learning teaching side, yes, they do want to learn things. Conducting, a specific mention, interestingly, not until this level. I was slightly surprised about that. I thought it might come lower down, but the conducting was mentioned specifically by the upper end ringers. Being able to see the band progress and observing effort and feeling as if that ringer has contributed to the development of the band and being appreciated. And then a few others, high ringing to chat ratio, enjoying all the ringing that's done, and oops, I'm not reading that last one, you can read it yourself. It's rather fun. So just to summarize retention, social aspects, friendship, having fun. I strongly recommend training the trainers. There's really good art training out there. I've done M1 and M2, and I would thoroughly recommend them to everyone, whether you want to teach or not. They add tools to your toolbox, and they're really worth going on the modules. Opportunities for everybody, teamwork and learning buddies, delegate roles. Share the load. You don't have to do everything yourself. If you want to know how to be an effective tower captain, the survival and what's it called? Survival and Recovery, that's it, Toolbox has got a couple of excellent articles on what one can do as a tower captain, leadership opportunities, supporting others, and supporting the church services and the community and being appreciated. So my comments from all of that are that as we move from new recruits to welcoming existing ringers into a new band, we do see many similar themes emerge. Social behaviours and having fun featured in every single response that came through. However, there's also a definite indication that new learners have different attraction and retention triggers from more experienced ringers. Personally, I found it really interesting that the level 2 ringers who have embedded handling but haven't yet progressed into the plain hunting or method ringing, whilst they actually do want to learn, they're really more focused on becoming embedded into the bell ringing community. And I would suggest that it's really at that point, if we want to retain ringers, that we need to be doing other things with them. We need to be asking them to join the team in quizzes. We need to be taking them on tower outings. We need to be showing them the bells and the local history around the church and engaging them in all the different ways that we possibly could to make sure that they do stick with us. And if you were to ask me for the 2 top things for each of the cohorts that I've been to, I would definitely say as follows. I would say that the new learners, those that aren't yet solo handling, the hooks, the triggers that will attract and retain are the welcome and good learning experiences. Once they become established learners, the level 2, then they really want to become embedded into a team, and it's exploring the wider aspects of ringing that are the hooks for them. The more experienced learners, those that are sort of at the plain hunting towards method ringing stage, they're developing their roles in a team and they want quality learning. The proficient ringers really want that extended family. They want to be part of the network, and they also want leadership opportunities. And then once you get to the advanced ringers, then they sort of relax into the fun and the friendships, but they also want to contribute to the development of others. So almost finally, this was from somebody who didn't manage to stay within the please respond with 3 bullet points. And I'm going to read this to you. The response from this person was, a school I've been involved with for many years has a fantastic record in just about every respect and a huge waiting list. So what's their magic? Well, nothing. They merely do exactly what all teachers and schools ought to do. It's a caring community where people look out for each other, trust the kids wherever possible, and just do all the obvious things, right things diligently. There are no magic potions or special insights. Where they're so different is that nearly all other schools don't manage to carry out these basic and obvious essentials. I think it's exactly the same with Kenton. It's not that it has some magical secret that makes it attract and retain people. It merely does the obvious and does it well. The question is, why doesn't everyone else do this? And my point that I put to you is that we can all do all of what is needed to attract and retain ringers. And here are my top 10 takeaways. Now, you've seen these before, Steph has already put them up, and you will see them again at the end. When you're talking about bell ringing, do your eyes dance? And is there colour in your voice? Have you appointed your most affable and welcoming member as a front of house manager? Do you embed team spirit? Do you train your trainers? Are you going to go to Leslie's presentation tomorrow? Do you plan effectively for skill development? And do you share the load? Is there something that you could do to promote better or easier attendance from your potential ringers? Be dynamic and active. Email that well done. This is what we achieved today. And don't forget to show appreciation and say thank you. And now I'm going to stop screen sharing and I'm going to pass back to Steph to sum up.
Unmute myself. You think by now I might be a bit quicker at it. Okay, so I am just going to briefly, we don't have very many slides left, you'll be pleased to hear, just a couple more. Basically some key messages to take away, which Sonia has kind of already covered in different words, which is that planning is really, really essential. Don't just jump in with stuff. Stop and think and involve the rest of your band. You know, plan. How are you going to reach out? Who are you going to reach out to? What are you aiming for? How are you going to achieve it? How are you going to measure success? How are you going to work out how to do things differently and better? Who do you need to involve? Recruitment and retention go hand in hand. You can't just recruit a whole load of new ringers and then just expect them to stick around. You need to plan for their retention as well. We have new tools. We have Ringing Room, we have Zoom, we have a whole load of blended online learning opportunities. That means that your learners don't need to go a whole week from one session to the next in between when they get to hold a rope in their hands. You know, you can follow up with some theory and some practice, and you can develop their skills in between just the bell handling, which we know can be quite a hurdle for people to overcome and a barrier to continuing. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. There's masses of support available out there and resources. I'm going to post a whole load of links in the chat very shortly. Don't try not to feel overwhelmed. It might feel like we've just thrown a whole load of things at you, and I know this has been really rapid fire, but start small. I mean, maybe just talk to your friends about bell ringing and be enthusiastic and keen about it, and build up from there. Sonia has already said that high quality teaching is really, really essential. If you personally don't feel like you're able to offer that, reach out to other people, because we're all part of a community, and we all desperately want each other to succeed. So there'll be people out there who can help, and of course there's the resources like the ART training. Collaborate with other towers. Don't burn yourself out. Don't feel like you are the one teacher in a 10-mile radius and you have to do everything. You know, reach out, form a team, get help. And remember Sonia's top 10 takeaways. Also, your newer recruits, they remember what it was like. They remember what the challenges were. They remember what helped them. Talk to them. Use their insights. They're the most valuable resource that you have. And finally, most importantly, have fun. It's got to be fun, otherwise people aren't going to want to come back. So this is just a few resources that we stuck on the slide because the slides are going to be available afterwards, so that you've got them on the slide. But don't worry, we've got a way bigger list of more specific things as well, which I will post in the chat and that we will also make available as a separate document. So don't feel that you have to write all this down. Don't need to. And as Sonia said, we just wanted to really, really, really emphasize her top 10 take-home messages. Be enthusiastic, be welcoming, provide fun and friendship, invest in your teachers, run quality practices, nurture skill development, enable leadership, consider location and timing. Don't just do things on a Thursday evening because that's when you always did them and it clashes with 3 other towers. You are allowed to change stuff, really. Promote community participation, both within the tower community, the ringing community, the church community, and the wider community. If that means having a ringers team for the pancake race, do it. And follow up, whether that's to say, well done, great stuff, or why don't you come and learn? Anyway, I appreciate that we both talk a lot, but we are very happy to now take questions, and I will stop sharing so that you can all see one another.
I can just
Thank you, Steph and Sonia, for weaving that together for us. So fire away, people. Anybody who wants to ask, the protocol obviously you can raise your hand using the hand raiser, or you can just send me a message, Tim Hine, on the chat, and we will endeavour to get your question to Steph and Sonia.
I was just going to say that I can actually now see the chat, and your what not to do is absolutely fabulous. I love it.
I have just posted the resources in the chat. Leslie has also offered to share them on the website, so I'm going to send the list to her, and they'll be on the ART website, and we can also put them up on the CC website as well, so that everyone can access them there, because there's quite a lot. There's loads of stuff, loads. And Leslie says she'll send them out at the end of the week. Thank you, Harry. That's very nice. Oh, there were a couple of comments earlier on in the chat that I thought were really, really good points. I'm just scrolling up till I get to them. So Luke Perkins says, like most things in life, a new recruit needs to be able to see people like themselves in the group to feel like they belong there. And that's kind of chicken and egg issue that we have in terms of diversity. And Kevin and Mark, hi Kevin and Mark. One thing came up in an earlier talk was to offer positions within the tower to newer ringers. So Sonia kind of mentioned this as well, like social secretary, and also other opportunities to learn how to maintain the bells or the clock, etc., to keep people involved. So this is a really good point. Just because somebody can't yet ring, plane, hunt doesn't mean they can't contribute. They can make cakes, they can welcome new ringers, they can help maintain the bells, they can maybe be like the church liaison officer or the wedding booker or whatever it is. Tim, are you chairing and picking who's asking questions?
I'm chairing at the moment, and more nice things are coming through. No more questions though.
There's three people with hands up.
Okay.
Claire Marie has her hand up, Tim.
Should we go? We'll go there then. That'd be fine.
Sorry, delay in unmuting. My question would be, nobody ever mentions on these things when we've included our wonderful new learner in everything, at what point we should suggest that they become a tower member officially, therefore a district and a guild member, and belong to the association?
I can just speak from the Sussex point of view. Other people might have other things to suggest. We have guidance, it's not a rule, about when somebody should become a member of the association, which is when they can ring solo, not necessarily in rounds, but they can ring solo, and that they can ring down safely, not necessarily up, but down. But
Okay.
other people might have different answers. I mean, we can throw it open and see what other people suggest.
It's much discussed in our district, from you must be able to ring a quarter peal, to you must at least be ringing for Sunday service, to you've got to do 2 or 3 years before you can be an official member. It's
Personally,
very degrading for a youngster.
It really is. And for anyone, I mean, it took me about a year to be able to handle a bell. I was learning at quite difficult towers, which if anyone's wrong,
Can I say, I feel quite strongly about this, because there's a lot of differences in how the towers in my area operate. And some of the quirks I strongly don't agree with, where you cannot be a member of the tower until you can do this, this and this, and then you have to wait until February for the AGM, and you can't be a member of the guild until you've been elected a member of the tower, and that could potentially take 2 years. You've lost your ringer by then.
Exactly.
I would actually say, if they want to be, and they may not want to be, but if they want to be, get them in quickly, because once they're a member, they're more likely to stay. And there's lots of other things that are on offer, not just ringing.
Loads of people will never ring a quarter. You know,
Absolutely.
they might not be able to stand for that long. You are discriminating against someone who can't stand for that long. For example,
give them a badge, and then they feel very proud.
Yeah, there's loads of comments in the chat saying make them a member of the band of the tower from day one, and then the guild / association once they can handle safely. And to me personally, that's what I'd go with. But of course, local situations may vary.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
That was a lovely question. Stimulated some interesting responses. Any more, Mike? You're on mute.
Thank you.
Jeff Horrocks had his hand
I
up.
can see at least 3 people. Right. Well, hi. Seem to have got myself on. My question relates to Facebook. So right early on, there was a throwaway comment: use Facebook as a recruitment opportunity. Now, I'm a member of Facebook. I'm members of lots of groups, but they're all ringing. So all the members in that group are already ringers. Then there's my family. Well, they're all ringers as well. So
Okay, so Jeff,
there's no point in
pick
me.
any interest under the sun, and I bet you there is a Facebook group for it. Painting
So-
fairies on the side of steam trains might be an exception, but you know,
So what
to
do
anyone
I?
any other groups, you can, local groups, history groups. So for example, my town has a Facebook group. One of the villages roundabout all have their Facebook groups. Save Sussex Heritage probably has a Facebook group. The WI probably has a Facebook group. The local history group will have a Facebook group. Some of them might be closed and they might not let you in unless you're a member. But a lot of these things are open, and I mean, much like the ringers groups, you just have to answer a couple of basic questions and agree not to be, you know.
So you just brazen along and say, "May I join your group?" And they say yes. And the next thing you do is you write on it and say, "Now, who of you would like to be ringers?"
Well, so I did mention in the talk, one of the local tower captains here in Sussex, on the local village Facebook group, for example, she'll say, "We're ringing tonight. We've got our practice at this time on this, you know, on this day of the week, or tomorrow night, 3 nights time, whatever, at this church in this place." I mean, don't assume that everyone knows which church you're at. If you would like to come and see what we do, let me know, and you can, you know, you can come and sit in on the practice for a while. And you've just, as soon as you've got them in the room, you can be nice to them, welcoming to them, explain things, but not at great length and great detail to them. Give them a go, chiming, if nothing else. Take them up to see the bells. Take them to the pub with you afterwards.
Yeah, I understand all of that, but I mean, basically, you're just saying join anywhere, even. Most of it, you won't have any interest in what they're doing, but you just join, and then as soon as you get on,
Try and hook them in.
Anybody interested in bell ringing? Is that so? You're as brazen as that.
Be as brazen as that. It's not necessarily me personally that does it, but yes, as brazen as that. I've tried targeting amateur musicians, as you've probably guessed I am, because I reckon they have many of the skills already that ringers need. You know, they can listen, they can count, they hopefully have some kind of coordination, and they know they know that it takes. Most importantly, they know it takes a bit of time and dedication to get good at anything. So, you know, I guess the other thing is that you personally don't have to do all this. Other members of your band could do this. So if you have members of your band who are interested in local history, they could join the local history Facebook group, you know, or could make an announcement at their next orchestra rehearsal that we're looking for people to learn to ring, and that kind of thing. Sonia,
Jeff, I would say be as brazen as you like. My last effort at not deliberately being brazen, I was walking back through the park from my second vaccination, and there was a West African 28-year-old drummer drumming in the park because that's where he was practicing. And I stopped and talked to him, and he's agreed to come and have a go at bells.
Very good.
Someone in the chat, Harry, has said there's a next door blog thing, which I have never heard of. So Harry might want to explain that, because I don't know what he's talking about. If Harry's around.
Next door, it's a sort of group, and residents can sign up. I ring in Frensham, and occasionally I post blogs up, but it's things that, you know, there's an accident on such and such a road. The road is closed, or people post things about strange visitors. You know, I've had somebody coming round to give me an estimate to rectify my roof, and I'm just wondering whether, I mean, I'm going to try it anyway. Post something there. It will go to people in about a 10-mile radius, probably. Goes to Frensham group and other groups within my area. It's something I'm going to try, and I can let you know back in due course.
And even if you're not inviting people to come along and have a go or join your practice, you can just take a picture of the bells and say, oh, we're doing some tower maintenance today. You know, just raising general awareness, making people aware that the bells are there and all the different activities that go along with, oh, we're having a striking competition today. Oh, we're ringing for a wedding today. Congratulations to so-and-so and so-and-so getting married today. We're ringing for your wedding. Da, da, da.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, loads. I'm just stealing ideas off other people. I see loads of other people doing this. It looks great.
Thanks,
you see, Sarah has put one up about putting something up on Facebook, even if you're ringing a single bell. And that's something I know Matt Lawrence has also reported in his little Shropshire village, exactly the same. At the moment, we're coming out of lockdown, but last year that was very positive for a number of villages, I think.
I can see Paul Draper's had his hand up for ages.
Paul?
Tim.
Hello, thanks for the presentation tonight. They've been absolutely brilliant. I've got something, it's around diversity and inclusion, and might be a bit of putting the cat among the pigeons, and I hope it's not too controversial. So for me personally, in terms of, say, Christianity or having a faith, if I were to give myself a label, it would be agnostic. I'm kind of probably more nearer to believing than not, but I'm very open-minded. And I just want to say that my journey in Bellring has been, I've always been made to feel welcome. But when I first started, I had this assumption, I think a lot of people do, that you have to be involved with the church. I remember asking the bell captain, like, do I have to be a committed churchgoer every Sunday? And she said, no, you're all welcome. And actually, it's surprising to me how many people in every tower I've been to are a mixture of people directly involved with the church and some atheists as well. I've been surprised at meeting some atheist bell ringers who do it because they believe it's a good traditional thing to do in the community, and actually they will happily go into a church because they love the architecture. So I kind of think, in terms of diversity, I kind of think that perhaps in a way there is a lot of an untouched group, but it's a difficult thing to raise because I guess you can't actively recruit atheists because then you'd upset the church and the vicars and so on. But I think there's kind of a difficult field to manage there, and that to make people feel that actually they're welcome from whatever their faith and whatever their background, but trying to keep a balance of.
I think that's a really good point, and I think whatever messaging that you include, you can try and again, no need to reinvent the wheel. Have a look at what other people have done and steal their wording. Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, remember. So things like all welcome, all backgrounds, all faiths and none, everybody welcome. If you have FAQs on your, our association website has FAQs on it. I don't know how to read music. Not a problem, you don't need to read music. I'm an atheist, or I'm not a Christian. Not a problem, you don't need to be Christian. I'm an atheist. And my mum, when she met my boyfriend, now husband, for the first time, it was very worried because he mentioned he was a bell ringer, and she thought, oh my gosh, does Steph realize that he must be Christian? He's not. You know. But yeah, I think this is
some vicars insist that ringers.
Some vicars insist, and part of me feels like, well, more fool them. You know, I've lost count of the number of times I've had to smile sweetly, bite my tongue, and walk out. You know, it's just I've rung your church service is the third one I've rung for this morning. I don't believe in your God. Sorry, I'm not intending to offend anyone here, but I don't believe in your God. I have given up my Sunday morning. Yours is the third church I've rung at this morning out of the goodness of my heart, and now I'm going home for a cup of tea. I'm not going to sit in your church and listen to your church service.
And actually, so there are some really good vicars out there. And actually, I moved to London a year ago, but in my former tower in Essex, and the Reverend there has made it a really popular church because he's actually welcoming people who don't have faith, and actually, you know, so that actually everyone is welcome. And
that's the thing. If you make everyone welcome, and it's the same with ringing, you've got them through the door, right? That's the first hurdle. They might want to stay, but if you mandate it, I think you're more likely to turn people off. Personally. But Sonia, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you've said exactly what I would have said.
Yeah. So
now, folks, I think we're going to let you all go soon. The numbers have stayed up remarkably well. We've still got around 100 people, but thank you very much.
I'm just having a quick look at the comments in the chat, Tim, just to, it's
there's
so quick.
Some stupendous stuff.
There's some really
here.
good things, so do have a look in the chat before you leave if you've got time. You know, Facebook awareness, a little bit of ringing etiquette. If you join a new group, don't just start posting immediately. Like, you know, like a few other people's posts first, and give them a chance to get to know you before you start dumping stuff in about bell ringing. There was something else. Ads. So Mel Cohen says, very important to add notifications to any form of local social media or press about the restart of ringing. This is so true, and it's something we should have mentioned. It's something to celebrate, right? Even if we're only ringing, you know, the odd number bells in the tower because we've still got social distancing. tell everybody that you're doing it. Hey, great, we're going back to bell ringing, it's almost the end, kind of thing. And also foresee complaints from people who've moved in nearby and didn't realize there were bells. Somebody's discussing about bell ringing and religion. Yeah, somebody mentions their vicar has forbidden anyone to come and ring on a Sunday who doesn't attend the service, so they're struggling to get a full band. I mean, if you have a vicar who has that view, it might be just be worth saying, okay, you know, absolutely, it's your church, so you make the rules, but just be aware that might be an issue. Oh, Don, whether you believe in God or not, a true Christian will appreciate the Lord works in mysterious ways to achieve his aims. Great. Yeah, and there's probably way more things in there that were really helpful that I've missed because they were all pinging past so quickly. But I'm certainly happy, and I think Sonia is as well, for people to contact us if they have questions, or if they, I mean, Sonia is like this wealth of information. She's done so much cool stuff. Yeah. We
have a recruitment and retention address.
Can you stick it in the chat, Tim?
I can put that on before
and then
we
people
go.
can direct questions to that, and you can forward them on.
I'll do that before we close it down. I think we should draw things slightly down to a close if everyone's happy. I think we should thank Mike for patiently handling everything. Thank you, Mike Chester, down there in the Coventry Guild, for being our tech support. I think Sonia and Steph have given us a really fantastic overview, and particularly in, I think, in Sonia's, what I would call action research. She's linked everything together based on the experience of the person that is actually doing the stuff rather than what we think. And I'm sure lots of us would agree that's marvelous to have. Very systematic approach, Sonia, and I think a lot of us will be watching that back. So great. As these presentations are being recorded, it's all going to go on YouTube. You can get it on the art side. Don't forget tomorrow. I think Leslie will be shaking in her shoes now, the number of people that have been saying how marvelous she's going to be, but she will be. There are other presentations. Do go and have a look at those. I think, though he's not here, I'm sure Steph and Sonia and I would want to thank Matt Lawrence, who's helped so much and given so much.
Also Hayley Young.
Yes,
Hayley Young,
Matt and Hayley helped a lot put this presentation together, and gave us feedback on what we were planning to say. And the workshop that I mentioned at the beginning is actually something that Matt originally developed for his local association, and then we've developed on further, you know, to make it available to everybody.
So that's been good. The art people, particularly Denise Tremaine, we should mention, has done a lot of stuff in the background, and Leslie Belcher, the art chair, has been the inspiration for a lot of this and making us go out and do it. So thank you very much, everybody, for your attention. I will, in a minute, I will put this famous email address into the box, but that'll take a couple of minutes. So thank you very much, everyone.
Really nice to see so many people.